morning, everyone, and welcome to Health Huddles with AARP Illinois. I am Courtney Hederman, the Senior Associate State Director for AARP Illinois, and we're thrilled to have you all join us today. Our focus for today's discussion is on aging gracefully, and specifically, though, understanding and supporting senior mental wellness. Now, I'm going to give you a couple statistics. Did you know that AARP conducted a survey in 2022? And it revealed older adults experience negative emotional distress during COVID. Okay, probably not too surprising. But the study illuminated where older adults were emotionally at and how they were managing their emotional and mental well-being overall. Now, when we asked about someone's mental health, 2/3 of older adults age 50 plus said their emotional and mental well-being are excellent or very good. Now, however, when we asked about very specific emotional health measures, this is the interesting part. 45% said they had been bothered by anxiety. 34% said they had little interest or pleasure in doing things. 31% said they had feelings of depression or hopelessness. And 52% had difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. And so those are pretty significant statistics. And so this is a little bit why we're doing this segment today. Now, while older adults have faced emotional challenges, certainly over the last few years, they are resilient and they feel they have what it really takes to kind of bounce back and really ultimately thrive. So even with a raised stress level and anxiety, those folks that we surveyed, older adults aged 50 plus say they are resilient. So when they asked to rate their level of resiliency from 1 to 10, and like 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, the average rating was actually between 7 and 8. I think that's actually pretty good. So in fact, 58% rated their level of resiliency as high. So that's 8, 9, or 10 out of the 10, right? And then 77% said their level of resiliency had not changed actually since the start of COVID. So I think that's also very, very good. And then 13% said their level of resiliency has actually increased in the last 2 years. So wow, I think those are all really positive things. So sometimes we have some not so great stuff and what we're thinking and feeling. And then, but you know what? We also know that we're also resilient. I love that. So that is exactly why we're talking today. And while it's certainly understandable to see any decline in mental health and emotional well-being during trying times like a pandemic, this is really not necessarily a normal part of aging. So to combat possible hesitation on the part of any older adult to seek help with managing their emotional health, it's important to access mental health treatment. It can be very easy and seamless and normalized, and ensuring mental health and emotional well-being are addressed during all medical visits, or they should be. It's certainly an invaluable step towards ensuring older adults receive comprehensive care. So that is why we're here. And I'm so happy. Today, we have a very special focus on our mental wellness and support available to older adults. And to shed light on this very important topic, we have an esteemed guest with us today. I'm so honored to be with her today, Roberta Williams. Roberta is a licensed clinical professional counselor and the program director for Franklin Hospital Senior Care Program. Welcome, Roberta. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's start certainly with some questions. But before I do, I'd like to remind all of our Facebook and YouTube viewers that you can ask questions, share your comments, anything you feel comfortable sharing in the chat functions, and we'll do our best to address any and as many questions as possible during our conversation today. So please put in your questions or comments in the chat. Okay, so let's kick some things off here. So I'll start. Okay, so I did kind of start off saying about aging gracefully. So kind of what do you like, Roberta? What do you think about aging? Like, what do you think aging gracefully usually refers to?
Well, actually, that's interesting because that question was probably the question that you sent that stumped me the most. Which, most of the time when we think about aging gracefully, it's a running joke, right? How do you age gracefully? What's graceful about aging? A lot of people use it in that tone because it is very challenging. So I kind of actually went to the source and asked some people, what do you think it is? What do you think it means? And I was kind of surprised by the response. And they said, you know, aging without memory issues. And I hadn't even thought of that actually, which I think that's just kind of a given, you know, when I think about it. But when I actually looked at that and I really put some thought into that, to me, aging gracefully is literally aging with a purpose, aging with dignity, right? With dignity and purpose and contentment, you know, being content or joyful about the life we've lived and what we're doing now. So I think everybody, that's kind of what they want, is to be aging with dignity and having a purpose and just being content with their life in general. So I guess that's kind of where I go with that.
I love all of that. That is absolutely, I feel that is spot on. I feel that too. What a wonderful way to share what you'd heard. Like, I think that's so important. Well, this is obviously Health Huddle, so we're talking very specific health things. My grandmother always used to say, if you didn't have your health, you didn't have anything. And no doubt, when we think of our health, sometimes people think of just physical health. And obviously, I think to be your best version of yourself, you need to be head to toe, inside and out, as healthy as possible, right?
Absolutely.
And so we are absolutely talking about mental health. So what is kind of mental health, or like mental wellness is certainly a topic that, or like a term that's used. So what do you think that, means, particularly too for older adults?
Well, I go back to that same thing, having our dignity, having a purpose. One of the biggest things that I hear when I talk to people who have depression and anxiety is that they feel like they're a burden. There's no usefulness. They don't have any purpose in life. They feel like they've lost that. And it could be for a variety of reasons. It could be because they've lost a spouse. It could be because they can't do the things that they physically used to do. They've retired. They can no longer drive. We can still have a purpose. And, through therapy, you can figure that out. But it's very challenging when you lose that sense of purpose, and then being content with the things that we've had to go through in our lives, and finding a space now where we're content. So I think that answers both questions. So
it really does. It really does. Thank you for that. Now, I mean, I talked about a little bit of, there's just normal aging, right? There's normal things that happen to us when we age, right? All good things. I was actually, before we started, everyone, I was talking about how I have to go to the eye doctor because I need to join the glasses club, right? So that's a very normal part of aging, right? I need glasses now. So, but I think that the thing that I would love to hear about more is, there's normal aging and related changes to our bodies, but there's also, mental health issues that there are signs that are probably a bigger deal than it's not just normal aging. So how do we differentiate between that?
So the biggest thing is when we start looking at the things that we're going through, right? A lot of these symptoms that you would see for depression or anxiety may mimic normal aging in some ways. You don't get out as much as you used to. Well, they might say, I don't get out because physically it's hard for me to get out, or I can't drive anymore. Well, is it really because of that? Are you isolating yourself for more reasons related to depression? Now, if you're having some of those symptoms, like you're isolating, you've lost interest in things, you're not doing the things that you used to do, you don't talk to people like you used to do, maybe you're sleeping more than you normally do. If that happens for a couple of days, that's not a big deal, right? We all have ups and downs. But if it goes on for at least a couple of weeks, then I would start to get concerned. Those are the things that we would want to look at. And some people, it may be a short treatment period. We get on it and we address the issues. But for others, it may be more deep-seated, and we have to deal with some other things.
Sure. So, and you bring up, just being isolated and whatnot. And obviously the pandemic
Yes.
certainly
Yes.
was a big part of that, right? And so, can you maybe share a little bit on some of the strategies that anybody can use to kind of cope with loneliness and isolation? You know, because sometimes you can be alone, but you're not lonely, right? But then
Yes.
there's
Yes.
other times where you feel I am lonely and I'm isolated. So,
Yeah.
what can people do? You think?
So, and that's a really key thing. People say, I'm not really lonely. Well, I've heard people who have said that and say, oh, no, I'm not lonely, but they really are lonely. And you can be lonely in a crowded room with people all around you because you're not connecting with them. You don't feel um, like you're even involved. So, that sense of loneliness really needs to be looked at a little bit deeper. But what do you do about that? During the pandemic, since you talked about that, one of the things I heard a news story about being intentional. And you can do that and not have to be around people, get out in nature. And so I've actually done that with people where we just took a little walk and they had to find something or notice something that they hadn't really paid attention to before.
Oh.
Well, what happens, and when we come back and we talk about it, what happens is they're really surprised at what they hadn't noticed. But while they were doing that, they're not thinking all these thoughts that we're lonely and or when we're around people and when we're depressed, there's lots of negative thoughts that's going on in our head. So anytime we can take a break from that, that's going to be beneficial. So anything we can do to reach out to other people, connect with people. Maybe you don't have the ability to get out of your home due to limitations. Finding different ways to connect through the computer, through these kinds of things. It's amazing. People are using technology more than they ever have before. But also, talking on the phone or just having people that we can connect with at church or through other groups or organizations, even after retirement.
Mhm. I love that. I love all of that. Because we were obviously just, mentioning COVID,
Mhm.
we actually do have a comment from a YouTube listener.
Okay.
And I'll just read the comment. I have not been able to grieve properly because of COVID. I am still in a fog.
Ah, yeah, that COVID created a lot of problems, right? So if it's something that you're still dealing with, that is somebody you might need to seek out a therapist or somebody to talk to about those kinds of things. We can grieve things in COVID or during COVID. It doesn't have to be people. We can grieve the changes that we've gone through. Um, this we've had a lot of changes since COVID, right? Things have
Mhm.
changed dramatically. Um, so working through and looking at what's sticking you is going to be important. Um, and the fog, the brain fog, that is going to make it challenging. So we want to look at that, right? Um, why is there problems with being able to focus or concentrate or the thought processes, and what do we need to do about that? If it's a lot of negative thoughts that we're having, then we might need to look at how do we reframe things and change that. So, yeah, that's a difficult one. So,
Mhm. Yeah, well, maybe, and I think perhaps the next question too, maybe could help for
uh-huh.
somebody as well, so that obviously we have daily routines. Like
Yes,
everybody gets up
yes,
and brushes their teeth. You have daily routines that
yep,
you do in general, and I think there are probably moments of feeling stuck, or again, depending on someone's mental health or what they're going through, their daily routine has changed in some way. Obviously it did during the pandemic, but
uh-huh.
how can we have stimulation incorporated into daily routine, so maybe then we don't feel how we're feeling, and if it's a negative way?
So the change is negative or the change is good?
Yeah, either one, I guess, right?
Exactly, right? So a lot of people struggle with change, right? They don't want things to change, but change is inevitable, right? And during COVID, a lot of things changed. A lot of things changed in a negative way. Were there some good things that come out of it? I think people would be challenged to find those things, but there probably were some good things that come out of it. We have technology that we use a whole lot different now. And I
Mhm.
know people that still use the shopping the way they did you know, as it kicked in during COVID. So there are some things that have changed that have been good, but you know, change is inevitable. And if we are struggling with change, that is a big one. And I hear that a lot. I don't want things to change, and it's changing anyway. Um, well, you know, we've got to find ways to change. And we don't like being uncomfortable, do we? As a society, we like things to go smooth. We don't like to be uncomfortable. But some of our best growth, our most growth, happens when we are most uncomfortable. And so some of those changes may make us very uncomfortable, but it can be good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when we're looking at those kinds of things, that's going to be some of the things that we look at and work on.
Mm-hmm. I love
I
that.
don't know if these are answering the questions. I hope it is.
Yes. No, I think so. Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but boy, it's very hard to change things.
Yes.
As much as I even might try. I will say, during the pandemic, probably the most positive thing that happened for me and my family is I don't think we ever spent that much time together. And I've got kids, you know, I have a husband and kids, and we had dinner every night. We played so many board games and did so many, you know, fun sing-alongs in the, you know, living room, that kind of stuff. I mean, we actually did spend a lot of time together, and I don't know if that would have been the case if it wasn't for that. And so we're even a stronger unit than we were prior in that kind of way, because we had so much really fun together at times.
You heard a lot. Yeah, you heard a lot about people gardening for the first time.
Yeah, trying new things.
How they can, yeah. So
yeah, I mean, how cool is that? Trying new things, and like, well, and I've never seen so many people walk around my neighborhood and, you know, ride bikes and, you know, do all sorts of things. So I guess, you know, the point of this is more, maybe we shouldn't give up some of those things that maybe even brought us joy during that time, or that it stimulates us in, you know, again, in a daily way. So then we feel good as possible.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So, you know, I think, you know, when we look at that, that's all change, right? And as we get older, we like routine. We're used to routine. We're used to doing things the same way. We get up, we fix our coffee, we sit down and read the paper, although papers are not like they used to be. But we have a routine. A lot of times I will recommend people actually work to change their routine, to make them uncomfortable, make them learn that that's okay, you know, and we can learn some things from that.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Okay, so I think a lot of people have family members or even caregivers that might be concerned, you know, for someone, you know, that they love or care for, right? So, you know, because sometimes there's a point when things are more unhealthy, right? It's not just some general stuff, it becomes more serious. And so just curious what you think are kind of signs that, you know, family members or caregivers should kind of look out for if there needs to be, you know, some additional attention to someone's mental health.
A big one, right, is a change in anything. You know, I've done this for years now. I've worked with older people specifically in mental health. And even I struggle sometimes to see that in my loved ones. My grandma had a stroke, and she was depressed following a stroke. Post-stroke depression is very common, right? And I missed it. Shame on me, right? However, what it is that, but I learned from it. For her, it wasn't the crying. It wasn't tearfulness, which is what you think of, right? It was, she didn't have the patience she used to have. She's more irritable. She didn't talk. The kids, she loved children and she loved to be around children. She didn't tolerate them. They made her more nervous. And so that was her signs. So it was a change, right? She would turn on her favorite TV show and somebody would comment on it and she would change it. That wasn't like her. So when we start to see significant changes in our loved one, we want to start looking deeper. What's been going on? What's happening? Are they sitting in their recliner with their eyes closed, acting like they're sleeping? even though there's people around talking, disconnecting from the interactions? Are they not going and supporting family activities if they can? Do they not sleep? Are they not eating? Are they losing weight? Are they crying? Are they more irritable? Look at some of those changes, and just that's the biggest. If you see a significant change in your loved one, you need to be clued in that there's something going on.
That makes sense. Thank you for all of that. I certainly want to, there were a couple of comments as we've been talking. I loved this. So the people are getting involved. So the comment has been like, my getting involved with AARP virtual community events like this over a year ago has been good. So that's really sweet. So thank you for that, that comment, folks. But then they also make reference, they enjoy exercise, meditation, cooking, cultural things, history, tours, travel, movies, even ballet, musicals, and theater. Like, how great. All those really wonderful things that people are using to stimulate, right? I love that.
That's great.
Good job.
That's
good job, everybody.
I'm happy. That makes me very happy. So
me too. Okay, so say somebody does, they've recognized they themselves, or again, a family member or caregivers recognize perhaps someone needs to seek some professional help. So how would someone kind of go about, like, are there resources available, and how would someone find perhaps the best provider for them?
Okay, so that was a very challenging question for a couple of reasons. One, it's a large area, right? A lot of people can be listening in different areas of the state, and some places are very rural and their resources are very limited, and some places have lots of resources out there. So my answer is going to be kind of general, but a great place to start is your primary care provider, right? And I'm going to address two directions there. One, with your primary care provider, most people, if you're on Medicare, you've got a Medicare wellness check that you can do yearly. So hopefully you're seeing your provider yearly. And one of the requirements, and you kind of alluded to this in your introduction, one of the big things that they're doing on regular doctor's visits is what's called a PHQ-9. It's a questionnaire, and hopefully the nurses, when they're checking you in, are asking these questions. They ask about depression. They ask about financial stressors or stress in the home, or anxiety issues. And those can be difficult to answer, right? I get asked those questions when I go to my provider. And it's very easy for us to say, oh, I'm fine, because it's hard to talk about. It's hard to talk about it when we're depressed, when we have problems. So the best thing I can tell you to do is be honest, be prepared. The other thing is that provider asking the questions are going to be just as uncomfortable as you, right? The stigma's out there. We all know it. And so they're ready for you to say, oh, no, I'm not having any problems. They're not ready for you to say, oh, yeah, I'm having some problems. So you need to make sure you're clear and concise about it, right? Because they don't want to see somebody upset and having a hard time either. They're great at making the referrals. They know the resources, right? So they're going to help connect you to. There's lots of programs out there. A lot of critical access hospitals are creating outpatient counseling services and mental health services. That's awesome, because they're reaching out in the rural areas. They're the ones reaching everywhere, right? We have services in the big areas, the metropolitan areas, the big hospitals. The small critical access hospitals are also now working towards that. Some of your rural health clinics are also doing that same thing, that are independent of hospitals, right? So that's all great stuff. So we know that there's more services. So your provider should know about those services. If they don't, your aging provider is going to, right? In the state of Illinois, they have the Department on Aging. Every area has a case management agency. Those case management agencies are awesome. They know what services are provided for seniors out there. They know them. They know them like the back of their hand. So they also will assess you for your depression and anxiety. So talk to them about the problems. So if you have the opportunity, reach out to your aging provider, but you can reach out to your primary care provider as well. Now, The other thing I want to say about that is if we're depressed, we may not be seeing our primary care provider because we don't want to go. We don't want to go and talk to them. We are isolating, right? We're not taking care of ourselves. We may not take care of our health stuff either. So again, those case management agencies, most of them will come to the home to do the assessment. So, reach out to that the Department on Aging, and talk to them and say, hey, who's your aging case management agency in the area? And will they come and see my mom? I can't get her to come out and go to the doctor. And I really think there's something going on.
I love it. That's so very helpful. Thank you so much for sharing all that advice. I think that'll go a long way for a lot of folks. You did mention something I certainly want to address, and that's kind of just the stigma of mental health.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter someone's age, actually, just in general, the stigma of mental health is a real thing. And so how do we address that, right? Because we know it exists. So how do we address that in general, you think?
So, the other thing I needed to say about the primary care provider is, cultural issues that can affect stigma as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is something that's coming to play, you need to be very clear about what you need. But because some providers, some cultural issues don't believe in mental health issues. So we want to look at that, right? Mm-hmm. Stigma is significant, especially for the older population. I think it was very scary at one time. Well, I know it was very scary. It's not just a thought. At one time to think about mental health issues, because you might be sent to the state hospital. And there were some very negative connotations related to that, right?
Right.
That's not the case now. A lot, when you were talking about normal aging and normal things, I hear about normal families and normal. There's nothing that's normal, right? What is normal, right? How do we define that? Mm-hmm. So, aging, there's no clear, definitive way to do it the best way, So if you are having difficulties, don't be afraid. There's a lot of people out there that are struggling as well. The stigma may make it difficult to want to go get help. I know there's a lot of concerns about losing gun rights and issues like that. If you're just going to counseling, it's not going to affect that. Having somebody to talk to is very important. And I know you can have the most supportive family, but you still could benefit from a therapist. The therapist is not personally connected to the situation. They're independent of it. So there's no judgment. There's nothing that's going to come back and get you later when there's an argument. So sometimes the family has the issue with the stigma. Mom doesn't need, or dad doesn't need to go to a counselor. I've had people say, my therapist says, and the family's like, shh, don't talk about that here. There's no shame in wanting to better yourself and to feel better. You want to just grow older and be happy and be able to share that with other people. The more we talk about it, the better, right? And the stigma, I think also, when you think about it, what happened in the family stayed in the family, right? You don't share that outside the family. Yeah. We're starting to see a change in that. We can talk about it. Therapists are confidential. They're not going to share it. They're like a piece of your family that's not going to go outside of here, right? Yeah. And build that connection with them. So
I love it. I love all of that. We did have a question come in from Facebook. How do you start the conversation with an aging loved one who is isolated and depressed and maybe experiencing even panic attacks, but is too proud to seek help?
That's a challenging one, right? I think just be honest and clear about your concerns. Talking around it doesn't get you anywhere. We can see the problems and we can know it's hurting them. If you talk to them directly about it, and don't make it like it's something that they're doing wrong or that they have control over, just that they can just shake it off. Let them know you're just wanting them to feel better, and just like I said, let them know the things that you're noticing. Talk to them about it.
Good
Talk to
idea.
them about the concerns, and that you want them to feel good. You want them to be able to enjoy this time in their life too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. That's great advice. Okay, so what other, like, this is kind of all, I think, interconnected too, especially with this last question. But, there's obviously things that we can do. The term self-care is something that's,
Mhm.
thrown around a lot now, right? But we need to take care of ourselves. And that
Yeah,
includes, again,
yeah,
inside, outside, head to toe, right? But
right.
for self-care practices, how do we enhance our mental health as we age? So what kind of self-care can we do?
I think the biggest thing is to take mental breaks, right? I think a mental break, we all need them. I don't care what age you are, because what happens when we get depressed and anxious is our thoughts become such a challenge. We're negative, we're down, we're anxious, we're panicking. So when we can find something that gives us a mental break, I love to read, right? I love to read. But I have other things that I do to take that break. I like to cook. When I'm doing those things, I'm not thinking negatively. I'm taking a mental break. When I watch a good old sappy love story or an action adventure movie or an old Western, I'm not thinking about the things that are stressing me out now. So take mental breaks. I think that's the best thing you can do. If it's meditation, if it's, exercise, just taking that break to give ourselves time to just reset.
I love that. I love that. So speaking of that, we're getting near to the end of our time together. But perhaps as we close, I'd love for you to take us through a little bit of a breathing exercise, if you will, so we can really leave this conversation, in a really positive way. And then it carries us on for the rest of our day and weekend. So maybe I'll send it back to you and you can lead us through that.
Okay, so when you guys do this, there's lots of ways to do it. Like I said, you can be intentional and go for a walk and look for things. But in your office, at home, at night, set yourself up to where you're very comfortable. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to do it now. Go, everybody, close your eyes, and I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose. Count 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for about the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Then blow out through your mouth, blowing out the candle. And I want you to extend that breath out to the count of 4. Now, when we take another deep breath in through our nose, hold it. And I want you to blow out the candles and extend that breath. I want you to think about your happy place as you're breathing, whether it be a beach with the water lapping. I want you to think of a warm sunset. I want you to think about a cabin in the woods with the fireplace and windows. And I want you to continue on taking a deep breath in through your nose, holding it out through your mouth. Okay, as you do these activities, you need to practice them. Just like you do exercise, you do it on a regular basis, you practice it. The more you practice these activities, the better you'll get at it.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. You just made my day. I feel even more calm already. So I appreciate this.
Good.
I want to extend our heartfelt gratitude for our esteemed guest, Roberta Williams. She is the director of Franklin Hospital, for sharing her expertise and insights with us. Thank you so very much, Roberta. How wonderful. Thank you.
You guys have a very great day.
Oh, thank you so much. For those looking for more resources on mental health, please visit aarp.org. That's another resource. Once again, thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to continuing our mission of supporting older adults, caregivers, and the entire aging community in Illinois. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend, and this concludes today's virtual event. Be well.